What's going on, everybody? Fifth Down Territory is back, and we're past free agency. We're sneaking up on the draft, so we're going to talk about some draft rumors and tell you if we think that there's smoke or fire there. We're also going to go over some rule changes and see if they're going to work or not, or how we feel about them. And it's Fifth Down Territory, so we'll probably get sidetracked somewhere along there and start talking about something else that you might enjoy as well.
Speaking of which, real quick, we got breaking news. This is from NFL Network's Mike Garafolo. All-Pro cornerback Tre'Davious White has signed with the Rams for a one-year deal of the max of potentially $10 million. So, Bahuki, sorry about that. I know he was your guy.
Yeah, it was a business decision. We got $10 million coming on the cap for us on June 1st, and I hope he gets his opportunity, and I hope he does well. There was some talk about him maybe coming back for a team friendly deal. Doesn't look like that's happening.
So let's talk about the Rams for half a second here, then, because they also got Darius Williams, the cornerback who left the Jags, and they signed Cameron Curl. So I know Aaron Donald retired, but they've done a decent amount of restructuring in their secondary, and they also, I believe, they signed Jonah Jackson and another guard. So they're beefing up their interior offensive line, and they're beefing up their back end secondary. These are the two things that I think that they kind of lacked last season. So look for the Rams just be right back in the thick of things. I think that again they could be a team that people don't think is going to be very good. And I think they'll win 10, 11 games and probably a playoff game. And be in the mix in the NFC. That has grown pretty difficult, I would say, this offseason. A lot of openings.
Yeah. And by the way, the offensive lineman you're thinking of was Kevin Dotson.
Yep, Dotson. So you re-signed there then, right?
Re-signed him and gave Jonah Jackson a nice little 3-year extension.
Yeah. Okay. First thing we can talk about here is the draft hype and rumors and stuff like that. So the one that I've been hearing a lot lately is that the Commanders are kind of enamored with JJ McCarthy. His odds at going number 2 overall went from plus 2,500 to plus 400. That's a pretty significant jump. I mean, I know it doesn't set anything in stone, but typically odds makers aren't doing that sort of thing unless they have some sort of information leaning them to do it. Buki, you're shaking your head. You wanna go at that first?
Yeah, what you just said was exactly what was going through my head. Yeah, to the odds makers are some of the smartest people in the world. That's one of my dream jobs, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be at that level. But those guys crunch numbers, and they work for Vegas, and Vegas does not like losing money. And so yeah, that pretty much tells me all I need to know. There's definitely a lot of smoke and to this.
Okay, Shane, what do you think?
I think it's BS. Just because this reminds me a lot of 2021 when Mac Jones was rumored to potentially go as high as two to the Jets. Most people had him attached to the Niners at 3 overall. They talked about how much they liked him in that system, how much they liked him as more of a prospect than the draft nerds they called him. They said NFL execs like him more than draft nerds do. He didn't go the draft until all the way at 15. So I think that was really more just to hype him up in order to try and move draft picks around, trying to gauge interest for a trade up or a trade down for some of these quarterback needy teams, trying to panic teams like the Bears who ended up taking Justin Fields, or even the Broncos who at the time were a potential fit for Justin Fields as well. So I think this is just another move to try and get one of those teams like the Vikings, like the Raiders, I don't know, maybe the Seahawks, to try and trade up, to try and get ahead of some of these other teams so they can jump ahead and try and grab either a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May or whatever it is. I do not at all believe the hype that J.J. McCarthy goes number 2 overall. Because there's nothing out there that indicates to me, and it doesn't have to necessarily be eye test. You can watch the film. You can ask anybody. I would take Drake May or even Jaden Daniels. I would say Jaden Daniels way above J.J. McCarthy. And that's just for my personal opinion. But this to me just sounds like pre-draft fodder. Yeah, the smoke that Blake likes just called it. I believe the smoke is being burned from snake oil, and I think it's just teams that want to trade back, trying to put these tea leaves out there in order to get some of these quarterback needy teams to make a rash decision and jump ahead for a quarterback that they want, because there's a quarterback that other teams think that no one else really wants unless it falls to them.
Okay. So I'm kind of in the middle with this, like with you guys. I think there's something there that the Commanders might like, but to kind of counter your point about getting teams like nervous, if McCarthy goes too, there's still Daniels and May. Like it's still like a 4. I think McCarthy, not to me, but has done enough to in the NFL like circles to bump himself up to that 4th quarterback who could be taken top 10. So I think that like.
But let me ask you this: if the Commanders did in fact take J.J. McCarthy, let's say more teams are higher on Drake May and Jaden Daniels. Your team, the Patriots, hypothetically, let's say y'all take Drake May. Let's say he's ranked higher. I know a lot of people have him ranked higher. That leaves Jaden Daniels open from 4 and on. So then why couldn't a team like the Raiders trade with who's number 4? Who's ranked number 4? Is it the Cardinals?
Cardinals.
Yeah, the Cardinals. Why does that not benefit them? So that's where the tea leaf comes from. If they in fact did, in my opinion, make the mistake of taking McCarthy at number 2, that leaves a quarterback that they would rank higher that the Patriots didn't take to jump in and get in there.
Louis calling you out, but looking yoked over there. Oh, he also has one for you, buddy. Oh, down there on the bottom.
Should the Bills target a QB with their first?
Yeah, go get Michael Penix or no, even better, Spencer Rattler. I think he looked great. He left. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not dealing with that."
He's like, "No, I'm dipping on that one.
I'm out." So yeah, I just think that the odds moving from plus 2,500 to plus 400 is giving it a little bit more credibility than if I just saw it on Twitter.
But that could also be them trying to move bets towards their favorites. So they spend more money. That's a lot. That's nothing Vegas does. Vegas does have insiders, but they also have what's it called? Coolers. You know what a cooler is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bookie, do you know what a cooler is?
A cooler? I mean, yeah, it's what I put my beer in when I go tailgate.
No, in the gambling world, a cooler is someone who would basically attracts other people to gamble because they think it's an easy bet. Like if someone over there, for instance, like at a roulette table, if someone's over there winning a lot, it attracts more people to come over there and place their bet to try and get their money, and that might be what this is.
No, I could see that.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And it doesn't matter to me either way because my quarterback isn't in the quarterback market, as even though Louis is trying to say we are. But in a way it does, because the more quarterbacks that go early, and if there's a quarterback frenzy and teams are trading up, that helps everyone later in the draft, and that pushes talent down. So I think this is good news for everyone. We've seen it happen in the past when Josh Allen came out. He was like one of the consensus top guys, and then Baker Mayfield came in, and then he became the consensus top guy because the Browns really liked him, and then Sam Darnold went, and so they don't always get it right. I'm not saying that the Commanders are right to take J.J. McCarthy better. I like those other guys better, but I don't know. The Commanders could muff this up, and much to the rest of the NFC East's joy.
Yeah. So Dan Quinn can do anything. I agree with this statement. I don't know how Adam Peters will feel, and he's ultimately the one who's going to make that decision, I feel like. So I hope they mess it up. I mean, J.J. McCarthy played Penn State and had 7 passing attempts. Like, I don't know how you could take that.
Well, that was mostly because the defense and the running game were so dominant. The quarterback didn't need to do anything. We can't put that entirely on him.
No, but Jim Harbaugh knows how to run an offense. I understand it's pretty much a similar offense no matter where he goes, but I feel like he at points was trying to hide McCarthy. I don't know. McCarthy reminds me of like Zach Wilson, smarter, but like I don't see it. So
hide your mamas.
Yeah, I'm begging that he goes number 2, and the Pats have their choice between Daniels and May. Because at that point, like people are talking about, huh?
I said that's a dream scenario for you guys.
Yeah. So, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that I'm going to be really sad after the Commanders pick because they're going to pick Daniels and will either trade back. I heard the Vikings are the possible, everybody here is talking about it because they got the 2 firsts. I understand the team has a lot of holes and a lot of issues that it needs to fix, but you're not in the race until you have a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take the quarterback. We can move on to, unless Shane, you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think we touched on all of it.
Cool. So now we can talk about Malik Nabers is the wide receiver 1 on like some teams' boards. Do we think that he goes over Marvin Harrison Jr. or I've been hearing that depending on what happens at that 4 spot, like with McCarthy and the Cardinals trading back, that the Chargers could be in on Nabers rather than MHJ. So, what do you guys think?
It definitely could happen. Malik Nabers is one of the players that, like in dynasty first rounds, that I have my eyes on, and I want to try and make moves for. I'd say my gut is probably no, because I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is just like such a unique prospect, but I really wouldn't be that upset with my GM if they really liked Malik Nabers and went after him.
Yeah. Shane, what do you think?
So the thing is that the top 3 receivers in this draft, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, and then Rome Odunze from Washington, those are the consensus top 3 receivers, and they all offer you things in different ways. If you want a route technician, you go with Marvin Harrison Jr. If you want someone who can play really well in coverage, even if it's like not perfect and still make the catch, that's Malik Nabers. If you want someone who I would say has the best hands of the 3, like a sure shot, like you'll catch the ball, but it might not be spectacular, but he'll catch the ball, that's Odunze. Odunze, I would say, has the best hands of those 3. That's in my opinion. When it comes to this decision, and you're right, I can't remember which one y'all said it, but like you said draft boards is based on what the other team thinks. I can't remember which one y'all said that. I'm sorry, but you're right. There's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to draft boards, and a lot of times subjectivity can also boil down to what type of receiver you might want. This guy, for instance, might be a better route technician. He might be a better receiver, but we don't need a route technician. We want a guy who can catch those 50-50 passes, who can be a lot better in one-on-one situations, who if our quarterback is under duress, who can throw it up and he'll catch the ball. That's fine too. I think draft Twitter is so far gone in believing that Marvin Harrison Jr. will be the first receiver taken that if Malik Nabers was taken ahead of him, it's going to feel to some like back when Darius Heyward-Bey was drafted over Michael Crabtree. And even though Michael Crabtree was the consensus top receiver in that draft, and he had a solid career, Darius Heyward-Bey was not worth that pick. He was a career deep threat. He was not worth the first. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that would be basically the same kind of reaction to it. I think honestly, this right here, me thinking about this, if Malik Nabers were to be taken over Marvin Harrison Jr., I think it would be closer to when Jalen Waddle was taken ahead of Devontae Smith, when everyone thought Devontae Smith was a better receiver. Now, granted, Jamar Chase was taken first, but he was the consensus top receiver in that draft. But because Waddle and Smith were so closely aligned and could do different things, and some people had one higher than the other, no one really batted an eye. But because Malik Nabers is getting so much good respect, and Marvin Harrison Jr. some people are talking about him as being the next generational receiver, I think more people will be okay with it, but they'll have that same type of reaction. But I don't think a team could go wrong with either one of those guys. But a lot of it's going to depend on the system which they're drafted into, because I don't think every system is going to benefit Marvin Harrison Jr., and which means you have a bad system. I don't think every system is going to benefit Malik Nabers. But I think it's going to come down to which team that wants a receiver first has their option at it. I know realistically right now, if no one traded out the top 4 picks, the Cardinals would be likely the first team to take a receiver. And luckily enough for them, they need all kinds of weapons, so they could take either one and they'd be okay. But again, I think when it comes to draft boards, it's very subjective as to which team considers which one higher, and these two are a lot closer, in my opinion, than we want to admit.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. So, like, the way I kind of look at it is if you take any one of those 3 wide receivers and you put them in a different draft, they're probably wide receiver 1 in that draft. So, like, you have this draft here where, like, again, you're definitely right about the scheme fit and like how your offense works and like what type of receiver that you need. But if you draft one of these guys and you can't make it work, that's on you, I feel like, because each one of them is a very, very solid prospect. They all do a lot of things well. They all like League Neighbors, like you said, is probably the best separator, and Dudze has absolute mitts on him. Like he doesn't drop balls. And Marvin Harrison's 6'4", could run a 4.38, and he's a precise route runner. Like he's a technician. He's his dad, but bigger, faster, and stronger. So it's I think there could be fire here on this take, but I can't really fault anybody for taking. Like I think the draft literally goes Williams, Daniels, May, Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze. Like maybe if you get JJ McCarthy
it goes
in
three
there,
quarterbacks, 3 receivers, and that's assuming no one trades their pick. Because if someone trades their pick, then someone's probably going to come in for a Joe Alt or another quarterback or something like that.
Yeah, that is what I think. And that kind of works because there's also 6, maybe 7 tackles that are projected to go in the first round. So like that moves all that quality tackle play down a little bit. And then you got guys like Brian Thomas Jr., you have Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, all kind of like Brian Thomas Jr. is probably a mid-round pick. Yeah, like they're all right in that area.
I'd agree.
So, like, your top tier defensive players are probably going in, because I didn't even talk about Brock Bowers. We like your defensive players. Yeah, we can now. I was just gonna finish the defensive player thought because I got into my own head there. Like you can get premium defensive talent probably like pick 12 on. You know what I mean? Like in other drafts, like you're probably looking at like a Dallas Turner type in like the top 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
this is a very offensive friendly draft. Friendly draft. Defense, it's a lot more top heavy, and then there's some developmental guys. But if you want like a starter on defense, you might not get one in past round 3 at the most. Some drafts you get one later. Maybe even second round. I don't think there's a whole lot of defense. I think the defense is very top heavy, especially at certain positions. But it's very offensive friendly.
Yeah, I feel that. All right, so we can talk about Brock Bowers a little bit. There's some in the community that are saying that his draft stock's falling a little bit. Because before this draft season approached, he was being talked about as like a potential top 10 pick, like the Kyle Pitts type of pick. I just with how it is to develop a tight end, let's take Sam Laporta out of this like kind of conversation for a second. Typically it takes 2 to 3 years to fully develop a tight end and have them playing like first team reps and really get inserted into the offense. I just don't know if you can use like a top 10 pick on a guy like that. You're gonna have to wait through 2 years for him to be a full-time starter for you. I know Bowers is a little bit different, but we all thought Kyle Pitts is different. Here we are going into year 3, and he's had nothing really.
Yeah, but that's a lot. It has to do with the Arthur Smith offense and the lack of quarterback play. So we can't put that all on Kyle Pitts, but that does make sense.
Sorry, my dog's crying. I don't know why, so I just wanted to bring him up here.
He wants attention.
Okay. Yeah, he definitely does.
So it's hard for me.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just because you're paying attention to your dog. It's hard for me to just like imagine a prospect like Brock Bowers not being taken outside the top 12. Because he fills a lot of holes in terms of blocking and as a receiver. And you bring up Kyle Pitts. Yeah, that's true. A lot of times first round tight ends maybe they're not really worth the pick right away, but. Sometimes first-round tight ends are worth the pick. Dalton Kincaid, your guy, was taken last year in the first round. He became the Bills' I think the Bills like a number 2 option aside from Diggs. Other tight, Sam Laporta was reportedly considered by the Cowboys, and I think even the Chiefs as a potential first-round pick as well. But they passed. But they both passed on him, and that was incredibly stupid. So. I don't always necessarily buy that tight ends, if they're drafted in the first, is a reach, because I think a lot of times that also varies on how a person or how a board views positional value. because some people think that tight ends, and this is true, that the tight ends take the longest to develop in the NFL before they can reach full potential. That's fair. Some people also think you shouldn't draft nose tackles in the first round. You shouldn't draft centers in the first round. There are inside linebackers. There are some positions that some people say, hey, this guy might be a first round draft, but we were not going to touch him because we cannot afford to what they would call waste a first round pick on a position. And if that guy is the best player on your board, then would it not be against your best interest to not draft him at the same token? Yeah. So let's take, the team I'm hearing the most about taking him is the Chargers. The Chargers I've heard the most about taking him. They have a rebuilt offensive line, a new offense, a new head coach, and I think since they got rid of their two leading receivers, it would make a lot of sense that they would get some kind of help in the passing game. And if the top three receivers are gone, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Nabers, I would argue Brock Bowers is better than any other receiver that's available. The next best receiver might be Brian Johnson, it might be Adonai Mitchell, it might be Troy Franklin, it might whatever it is you prefer. If you're a team that needs a playmaker in the passing game, Brock Bowers would be the next logical option. And at that point, you have to ask yourself, do we want to improve the passing game, or do we want to stay true to our concept that tight ends should be taken in the first? And then at that point, you're stuck with you're between a rock and a hard place, which it's some teams have to deal with.
Boogie, what do you think?
Yeah, Shane made a lot of good points there. The first one he was talking about, like, there have been some really good young tight ends lately. Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid mentioned. Other one I was thinking was Trey McBride
Trey McBride's been very good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a really good young tight end. So, and he also mentioned positional value is a huge one with that first round pick, because a lot of GMs don't feel like you should be using like that. You want to use that first round pick on a premium position like a wide receiver, quarterback, edge rusher, because you get that means you're going to have them on a cheap deal for 4 or 5 years with that 5th year option, and you don't want to waste that opportunity with like a running back or something, and then because you want to then you can spend that money in free agency on those non-premium positions. But yeah, you got to take best guy available. He said that. I agree with that. And then other thing I was going to mention is just kind of the rise, the value of the tight end right now. And we're seeing teams run 12, and the Chiefs are running 13 personnel, and it's the reason they kicked our ass on defense. We could not match up when we had Teron. We wouldn't take Teron Johnson off the field, and they were putting 3 tight ends out there, and it was just a matchup nightmare, and they ran all over us. And being able to get bigger on the insides is kind of like I think that's what the really good offenses are starting to do right now.
Yeah, teams are using more and more, like you said, especially in college, are running more 13 personnel because they know if you have a good depth of tight ends, you can get more blocking out of them. Like if you had extra offensive linemen out there, but it can also open up the passing game because there's very few corners, especially in college, that can effectively cover a tight end who's able to get open.
It's a matchup nightmare. It creates so many mismatches. It's like I don't know how to beat it if you're going against a really, really good team, especially Andy Reid off a bye week.
Yeah. So so do we think he still goes in the top 12? Do we think he falls? Like
I can't see him falling. I can't.
Yeah, no, I think he falls to the max to like 10 to the Jets. I think that the Jets is a really good landing spot for him, especially since they added Tyrone Smith and Mike Williams. Like at least you'll probably get 10 games out of both of those players, and you can put it together at tackle after that, and then you add Brock Bowers to Garrett Wilson, and hopefully a half of a Mike Williams is still more than 2 times an Allen Lazard, I guess, if you want to do that type of math. So yeah, I think that he falls at most to like 10 to the Jets, and I don't see him going further than that. I saw some people having him go to the Colts at 15. I don't think that he reaches that spot. I do love the landing spot. I think it's a good thing that they've needed since freaking Dallas Clark retired. they haven't had a good tight end in there, unless I don't think I'm wrong, but like they've had.
Well, I mean, they
Jags.
had what's his face? They got drafted by the Lions. He was good for a season. Eric Ebron. He was good for like 2 seasons
Yep,
for them.
Eric Ebron.
But they haven't had like a good, like you said, like a good franchise tight end in a long time. Not since Dallas Clark. When they had Bernard Pollard and Dallas Clark together, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a great team.
Well, it wasn't fun for you because you had to play them every year, but yeah,
we beat them most of the time. It's okay. Yeah. So I just don't see him falling to 15. But it would be a fun landing spot. Have you guys heard any rumors, like any draft rumors that like are kind of outside the cut?
I have heard like, again, I'm trying to add credence. So there's speculation. I'll just speak because I'm a Cowboys fan, and I even asked my friend who works for the Cowboys if this is for real or not. That Jonathan Brooks, who some people thought would be the best running back in the draft if he wasn't coming off an ACL tear, he could be a potential second-round target for them. Now, I know you want to take the first round or whatever like that, but he's a name that a lot of people popped up as like, do teams touch him because of the ACL tear? I think a lot of people push their focus more towards a Trey Benson from Florida State as being their preferred running back. Whatever it is, because it ain't a great year for running backs, but it's a good year for like if you need specialist type running backs.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Brooks, what's interesting about him is that the Cowboys doctors are the ones who performed the surgery, and they're also the ones who underwent the rehab with him, so they have the inside knowledge of how well he is coming along from that. And because the Cowboys have kind of shot themselves in the foot this offseason and just didn't touch any of these free agent running backs, which would have been better than some of the draft picks, they put themselves in a position to where running back has gone from a luxury possibility to an absolute need. But I also have this philosophy that you don't draft a running back who's coming off an injury that past season any higher, in my opinion. I understand if they're good, any higher than the 4th, maybe the 5th.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. No, I mean, I did want to stick into the 1st, but like you can find good players after that. So if there's anything that you guys are hearing, like I think Jonathan Brooks is a good like that's a good pairing right there. I do think if they took somebody like him, they could look at or maybe like Braylon Allen, like big body type of player who could handle that type of workload. Maybe you can get them both depending on the ACL. If people don't want to touch Jonathan Brooks because of an ACL, then they shouldn't want to touch Michael Penix either because he has 2 ACLs.
A lot of shoulder. Since you brought this up, like I saw, I think it was Tom Pelissero put this out there that a lot of teams might not be as high as the Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson as a lot of other teams are, just because again that positional value thing. So a lot of teams have put them in like they won't touch until the 2nd round because some teams still, whether they don't value the center position as highly or they think they can get or whatever it is. I think in any sort of like, common sense era, we would say that Jackson Powers Johnson, he could potentially be the best offensive lineman prospect overall, regardless of position. I know there's a lot of good tackles. I'm just saying, like, if you just like put him in that category, he would be in the discussion. Yeah. But me and Bahuki just talked about it. Positional value is one thing that kind of pushes a lot of these really good draft picks down draft boards. And we see every year players that have, we would think, 1st round grades, don't get taken to the 3rd for whatever reason. And if that report is true, that Jackson Powers Johnson didn't touch till the 2nd round, then in what I think is a pretty good like first 5 or 6 center type draft means teams can get a starting quality center sometime anywhere between day 2 and early day 3.
Yeah, that's really good. So since we're talking about O-line, like somebody that isn't really being brought up all that much is the Duke offensive lineman, Graham Barton.
Graham Barton.
I believe so I'm pretty sure he has spent time at all 5 positions. He's played center, both guards, and both tackle spots. And he his main position is probably going to be right tackle. But if you can get a guy like that who can move inside, even play center for you in a pinch, that's a lot of versatility on your offensive line. And like it kind of reminds me of like a Michael Wenu who can like move inside, play on the outside, like do 2 things for you if you really need him to. I just think that that's interesting to like look at. I think that he could be probably like a back end day 1 pick. And if not, somebody's getting a really good player on day 2. But But yeah, what else? What else about the draft? I know we're a little bit like we're still kind of about a month away, give or take, 37 days. Actually, no, we're exactly a month. So, Buki, you got any thoughts? Any rumors you're hearing?
Yeah, it's not really draft related. But something I was reading about pre-show that's coming up is the deadline on Justin Fields' fifth-year option is May 2nd, and the Steelers basically have to decide whether they're going or not they're going to do that, and it's pretty much expected they're not going to do that, because then that kind of ruins like the pecking order in their quarterback room. Like that would kind of tip their hat that they've made another year commitment to Justin Fields. And he's kind of viewed as a backup quarterback. If they were to if the second was like 28.6 million for him to be, if he doesn't do it, he's franchised, it would be 42 million. But that's not as likely. He's probably going to be valued as a second round or a second string quarterback when free agency comes around next year. So the value, it would probably be best to just kind of let it ride with his rookie deal right now.
Yeah. I heard that Russell Wilson and the Steelers are also talking extension. So like I really don't understand why the Pats didn't do that. You get a 6th round pick for Mac Jones, you can't send that 6th round pick to the Bears to, get Justin Fields. Now like the Steelers have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I don't even care if it works out for them or not. At least they tried to improve their QB room. Like it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Yeah, I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett, solid dude, probably really great person, but he's not going to win many football games this year. But yeah. So other things I'm hearing about the draft would kind of be like, I think Quinion Mitchell, I believe his name is, the cornerback out of Toledo's kind of risen up the boards and it might be the first cornerback taken off the board. I still think it's Terrion Arnold and then Kool-Aid McKinstry and then him and then Cooper DeJean. I like all those players. I think there's some solid cornerbacks in this draft. But what do you guys think about him being the first cornerback taken?
I think I gotta go, unfortunately.
That's all good, man.
But I'll leave you with this. I wouldn't be surprised if Quinion Mitchell's taking top 10. That's all I'm gonna say. See you later.
Okay. Peace out, man. Boogie, you got any thoughts on that?
I don't know who's the top, most cornerback needy team right now up at the top of the draft.
Right. I mean, the Colts possibly. Maybe a team like the Jaguars.
Yeah,
teams like that probably.
Jaguars would be a really good one. Colts have a few different needs. Yeah, we were talking about them maybe going in the Brock Bowers direction. Yeah, I like the Jacksonville one. They need some cornerback help for sure.
Yeah. All right, so I think we can move on to the rule changes, and if we think of anything else in the draft, maybe we can bounce back to that. But how do you feel about the NFL eliminating the hip drop tackle?
Yeah, this is definitely the one that is worth talking about. I don't love it, man. I mean, I was a linebacker. I'm a defensive guy, and I think that this is going to be really tough to enforce, and I think it's going to be called the wrong way. And I think I saw with some of the stuff that's with how reviews are being changed. I know we'll get to that later, but it definitely they need to be able to review like all of these calls. Like there needs to be like coaches need a blue flag to challenge penalties or something, because I understand taking it out of the game. They say it's 20 to 25. times more likely for injury, and people are saying for fantasy this should be a good thing. And if it really is taken out of the game, then there should be a lot less injuries to skilled players. But I don't know. It's football, man, and and sometimes you when you're in pursuit and you're running a guy down, and if you say and you're trying to save a touchdown, you tackle by any means necessary. Yeah,
Yeah. I just feel like you can't hit anybody from here up now, and now you can barely touch somebody from your like stomach down. So you have this one window. It's like a strike zone that you're able to tackle, and with how crazy these athletes are coming out of college and like everybody is, how are you supposed to take players down just like that? I know that people have been arguing that there's only a small percentage of plays that the hip drop tackle was actually used on. I believe it's like I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of NFL plays that like it was actually happened on.
they
But
think
it's
it's
not just
about
huh?
once per game on average.
Yeah. So I just what messes me with me isn't really the rule change itself. It's how a defensive player is going to be thinking about making the tackle. They have to think about that and like change the way that they're learning to make that tackle. It's not about oh, there's not that many hip drop tackles. It's about like players having a completely different mindset when they go in to make a tackle and how that could mess up something else or the play itself or somebody else get hurt in a different way. Like you said, it's football, it's a contact sport. People are going to get hurt like at some point, unfortunately, but that's the game you're playing. Like it's kind of like in basketball, you can barely touch anybody now even though it's a contact sport. You know, you hit the shoulder on the way up. They're like, "Nah, he's going to the line for two," and you're just looking at him like this. I didn't touch him. Like you're like, doesn't matter. And also, the thing that this could affect is the fact that more athletes are choosing to be on the offensive side of the ball instead of the defensive side of the ball. And that could degrade the talent of defenders moving into the future. And I mean, like you just said, you're a defensive guy. I like a good defensive game as well. Obviously, I want to see offensive points scored, but like the whole point watching somebody play offense is fun is because there's somebody equally as good trying to defend them and them beating that player in order to gain the yards or score the touchdown. Like that's the whole point. If it was that easy to do it, you know, like why am I tuning in every week if it's not this like intense battle between two sides, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things you said earlier that I agreed with heavily is for the form tackling and the player is it's something that you've been taught since the grassroots level, since you were a kid playing, and you to expect the people to just snap your fingers and like the change to be implemented, I think is not very realistic. But we'll see how and we'll see how often it's called and how well it's officiated. I know I feel like every time we hear Gene Steratore come on, he always says, "Oh well, they made it was the correct call," and a lot of the times it's not. And
Yeah. Quit lying to me,
they,
Gene.
they bring the rules official on, and they lie to you right there.
Yeah.
I remember there was one really egregious one that happened against the Bills. It was an intentional grounding because Gabe Davis ran an option route and then took like made the wrong read and ran the wrong way and Josh threw it in like the other direction and it was called intentional grounding, but it wasn't intentional grounding. And yeah, you know, this is just kind of the way the NFL goes. I feel like the NFL Rules Committee, the reason that they have to make these crazy rule changes is to justify their own existence, If we didn't have these stupid rule changes, why would we have an NFL rules committee that's being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for no reason?
Chicken and the egg, my man. Chicken and the egg. Which one came first?
Yep.
All right, so I think we kind of covered that one. So the other things that are here now is that the trade deadline is moving a week to week 9, not week 8. Not really much to talk about there. I mean, I think it's fair that you're moving. Like, if you're trying to extend the NFL season, you should probably move back the deadline. Also, actually, something that we talked about with DJ Fluker last week is with the inclusion of a possible 18th game, should there be a second bye? And I mean, he said that um he thinks that would be a good idea. You're playing more games, you probably should get another bye if you're increasing the amount of plays you're running. I don't see that happening anytime in the future just yet, but we have to actually get to an 18 game schedule before we can see how that affects players. But what do you think about the deadline moving?
Yeah,
Nothing crazy.
I think that the second thing that you brought up is like it's common sense. Yeah, I think as the trade deadline has really grown like in the last couple of years in the NFL. It's we see more action in like the last like 3 to 5 years of the deadline than we have in I don't know the last 10, 15 years combined. I feel like,
Yeah.
and so and I think that's good for the NFL to have like eyes on the sport and people getting excited for whatever reason. Um, and yeah, so if they're doing that, then why have they not already added a second bye week? I mean, and we should be talking about 2 or 3 bye weeks if you're being honest. They have it in college and they play fewer games. Why do they not do it? Because they're so set on their schedule and when the Super Bowl has to be. Because the Super Bowl is a lot bigger than just the NFL, and there's a lot of political stuff and other stuff that goes on, and the Super Bowl is set on the date that it's set at. So if and how they're going to do it, that means moving up the preseason, which I have no issue with. I don't think anyone would be like, and I think there is a place for the preseason. I guess it is quite hot out there for players to be out there, but these people have indoor practice facilities and whatnot. It's already the off season. And they can have if they're gonna move it up, give them more days off, whatever. It's possible they can do it. Why haven't they? It's the NFL. And there's too much bureaucracy.
Yeah, no, great points. Great points there. All right, so now coaches get a third challenge. They'll no longer have to win their first 2 challenges to get a third. Now they only have to win one of their challenges to be awarded a third challenge. If they win both of them, I don't think they still get the third. No. They will not get 4 no matter what.
Yeah, 3 is the max. You just got to go 1 for 2 to get the third now instead of having to go 2 for 2. I don't think the needs more than 2 games. Most roster decisions are made. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't. I mean, not even the games, but just like the season and how long people are in camp and whatnot. But yeah, 1 or 2 games. It's I don't know. You need to get the starters out there for a quarter to knock some rust off, and they're going to be knocking rust off for the first 3 or 4 weeks, regardless. So it's really just kind of for those back end roster guys who are trying to make it. I get it, yeah, but it's with the NFL's you got to figure it out. If they're going to extend the season, they need more bye weeks for sure.
Yeah. Huh?
Sorry. I got sidetracked reading this comment.
No, you're good. You're good. It's all good. We actually got a couple minutes to kind of use up. So yeah. So the challenge thing that the biggest thing to me is like if this was available a couple of years ago when the Pats played the Chiefs and the infamous N'Keal Harry was out play when even though you could see green in between his foot and the out of bounds line, we would probably have at least gotten close to winning that game. But having that extra challenge, if you do succeed on one, is going to be crucial in late game situations because coaches don't have to feel like, oh, I only have one more challenge now. I need to be judicious with it. If they succeed on the first one, then they're more likely to swing on the second one because they have that third in their back pocket. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Are wrong all the time. I'm always in favor of coaches being able to challenge it. With how many bad calls we've seen, I feel like this past year, the consensus around the most fan bases is that this was some of the worst refereeing we saw. I feel like refereeing is getting worse. So yeah, absolutely give the coaches another challenge and let them challenge more things. Let more things be reviewable, especially with all these terrible calls we're seeing, and games get ruined over it.
Yeah. So now moving on to the next one: enforcement of fouls on change of possession plays. During a play that results in a possession change, if fouls are committed by both teams, any major offensive fouls like unnecessary roughness that were committed before the possession change will now be enforced as well. So if you do get a possession change, you're probably looking at a 15-yard penalty once you switch possessions. It doesn't just get like annulled. I don't think that's a major. I don't think that's a major change. I do think it will impact some things, but typically when there's a change of possession, you don't see a lot of flags be thrown anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a pretty like unique situation that it's talking about. I guess there's then that means that it was open season basically, and you could just crack someone and it wouldn't matter. So I guess maybe that's what they're trying to take out, but I don't know. I don't feel like we're gonna actually see this one enforced more than once or twice this season.
Yeah. So now there are also changes to the replay. So the replay assistant will now be allowed to correct objectively incorrect calls for intentional grounding or roughing the passer. That one seems pretty big. There was a lot of roughing the passer calls that were frankly bullshit. But that's pretty interesting. Replay review will be allowed when there is clear and obvious visual evidence that the game clock expired before the snap. So yeah, that was also something that we were seeing a bit later in the season. Play clocks hitting zero and people getting the snap off without the delay of game penalty.
Yeah,
Huh?
it happened more than once.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of times that happened, and I was very confused as to why. But there's always like the refs always give them that extra tick, so I think that the assistant or the guy in the booth is going to be like, "Look, like let's bring that back. Like there's a delay game." I actually don't love that because if you get the snap off and the play is live, like what are you gonna do? You know, replay it after the play and then take away the play. I don't think that's going to work well. You know what I mean? Um, ruling of a passer down by contact or out of bounds before throwing a pass are now reviewable plays. Um, yeah, I don't think there's much changing there other than the one that we were just kind of talking about with the delay game. Because like, if a big play something like what happened to the Chiefs against you guys, like with the Kadarius Toney lining up out of formation, essentially, like the play happened, and then they called it back, and everybody was pissed about that. I think that could happen more often if you have this sort of delay of game penalty, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a decent point. Yeah, the Kadarius Toney one.
That was his fault. That was
yeah,
his fault. No, like
funny how like I don't I think the whole situation was overblown. I was at that game. I saw it from the three. I said he was offsides before like Travis Kelce had even caught the ball. I was never worried for a second. I knew it was. Yeah, I guess the thing that I think about is how is that called? Do they blow the play dead immediately, or do they let it play out and then it's challenged, and then you're challenging the play that happened 2 plays ago? And then what happens if someone gets hurt during that play that never had to be run? And like that would be because that's a thing in the soccer world. They've been since VAR has been implemented. They go longer with calling offsides, and now they let guys run longer, and then injuries happen for a play that was going to get blown dead anyways. So that would be what I think about. And I mean, it's just gonna have to be how it is until something bad happens.
Yeah, I get that. So now, thanks to a rule change proposed by the Detroit Lions, teams now have an unlimited number of designated to return transactions during the playoffs. Interesting. So if your dude gets like if it's like a Mark Andrews type of situation, you don't have to worry about how many type of moves like that you have to make, I guess. I do think that's interesting. Won't really impact a lot of like controversial things, but I do think that's a rule for the better. Um, Now the emergency quarterbacks was tweaked as well. So emergency third quarterbacks who are available to play in case the starter and backup are ejected or injured can now be elevated from both the 53-man roster and the practice squad. Last season, emergency quarterbacks could only be elevated from the 53-man roster. So now you don't have to keep that emergency quarterback on your 53-man roster. You can keep them on your practice squad as long as they don't get signed by another team. What do you think about that?
I think these ones honestly like kind of go hand in hand in the playoffs in that they give you a little bit more practice squad like flexibility.
Yeah.
Because you can and when guys are like coming back and they changed the IR thing a couple years ago, so that now there's the 3-week IR and you don't have to go on the season ending, and I think it's for the best because it usually happens with depth guys because like you run out of elevations or something from the practice squad, or you've been out hurt once or twice throughout the year, and then guys end up getting cut or something like at the very end. It's usually not going to be like with your prime time starters that you hear this about, but it's something that like will help teams with their depth at the end of the season. So I'm in.
Yeah, I think both of those are like the best rules changes that they made. Then the last one here is the kickoff rule. Honestly, there's too many parts to this rule for me to understand quite yet. But I think it's going to be looking like the XFL.
Yeah,
Or
pretty much it. It's the XFL kickoff. They just said that, and it's going to take some getting used to. That's for sure. It seems to have worked pretty well for the XFL. It's still a kickoff return, but it's not the kickoff return that people grew up with, and there's definitely going to be some moaning and groaning this season about it.
yeah, there's just like I feel like the days of like Devin Hester are kind of behind us, or the Cordell Patterson primetime years. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people are just going to take the 25 yards and move on. Which kind of does suck, but I understand why they're trying to make the play safer. I mean, theoretically, players have the most move, like the they're moving the most. They have the most momentum, and then the most what's the word I'm looking for? Randomness, I guess, on those types of plays for
Yeah,
somebody to get hurt on.
can be hit at any angle, at any speed. So yeah, it's just kind of it's just taking the full speed hits out of it, and it sucks, but it's the most dangerous play. It's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, football is fun because it's sort of dangerous. But I get people want to make the player safety front like in the front and foremost, and that makes total sense. It's just we still we have to see what the product looks like. I'm sure that I'll still be entertained. It's just a matter of fine tuning it in the right kind of area. You don't want to go too far, and then you don't want to not do enough, essentially. But I think that we hit all of the rule changes. We did our draft smoker fire. Anything else you want to talk about for the last 5 minutes, or you good to wrap it up?
No, I think we can wrap it up early. I think it was actually a really good show. We had some pretty good dialogue there.
Yeah, and we didn't run over. So we're in that part of the NFL off season, and I'm sure by next week we'll go 10 minutes over. So we'll make up for it. Thank you, everybody, for watching Fifth Down Territory this week, produced by Stadium Rant. You can find us at stadiumrant.com, on our YouTube channel at Stadium Rant, on our socials at Stadium Rant HQ. Find us, follow us, send a like, subscribe, read some articles. Got some great shit cooking. So have a good night, guys.